Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on this Friday, the 14th of April. I hope everybody's well. Summer is slowly coming to the UK. We'll just wait a few moments for people to join. I almost actually started at 8 p.m. I had a late reminder, so apologies if you've been waiting a few moments. But we are starting, and we're only 1 minute late, so that's pretty good. So we'll give it a moment and wait for my co-host Abu to join us, and for anybody else who's watching. So this week we will have people joining, so I'm going to share the link. So if you'd like to join the Hangout, then feel free to do so. Oh, let me send the link to the main chat and not the Hangouts chat. So here we go. You can join the discussion there. And this evening, Abu will have some interesting information to share with us. I've put him off for a couple of weeks. Obviously, we had Ozymandias Ramesses II last week, and Abu was going to do a presentation, so he's going to do it this week, and then we'll get on and probably have a little bit of a chat around what he's going to present. Good evening, Baby BJ. Just tweeted that it's live right now. Thank you very much for that. Hope you're well. Hope everybody that's watching as well. And happy Easter to those who celebrate that. Even though I'm a non-believer, I kind of celebrate it in the sense that it's cultural for me. So obviously a holiday here for those of us in the UK. Even though I did go in and do a bit of work today. Family's away, so I'm all on my own here with a dog. So it's all quiet here, but wishing those people who are enjoying the holiday a good time, and let's hope the weather is good this weekend. Sometimes people ask, well, you know, Rob or some other non-believers, why do you celebrate? You celebrate chocolate, yes. Why do you celebrate Christian holidays or festivals if you're not a Christian? Well, it's sort of cultural. I've obviously been brought up in a Christian environment, originally in South Africa and now in the UK, although the UK is a lot more secular. And again, they're mostly a time to spend with family, friends, that sort of thing. And of course, you know, most businesses, apart from shops and the banks, etc., are closed. So there's no harm in you know, taking that time out with family. So I don't see it as a religious holiday in that sense. For me, it's more of a cultural thing, and time to spend with the family and do other things. So unfortunately, we don't have any secular holidays. It's almost all religious holidays that I'm aware of. I suppose the spring holiday or the summer holiday or whatever might be called secular. But most of the holidays are religious based. And of course, culturally, this is a Christian country. And so therefore, those holidays that are celebrated are Christian holidays. So hence why we celebrate it from a secular point of view. So wherever you are, May, yes. Vegzehola, May, I'm guessing you're meaning May as in the month of May. I think we have some holidays that come up here in the UK. I think it's called there's a summer holiday and there's a spring holiday. I don't even know all the names of it. They just sort of come up when you run your own business. If you enjoy what you do, which I do, every day is kind of, most days are like a holiday. So I don't really keep track like employed people. And I remember when I was employed, then obviously May is Workers' Day. There you go. So that would be a secular holiday. There we go. Thank you. Depending on what country you're in, of course. But I remember when I used to work, and I enjoyed what I used to do before, holidays were a great time. Now holidays is another day, and it's a day where I, you know, either don't have to or don't want to run the business for that particular day. But obviously you're not getting an income when the business isn't running. So I do know what it's like for people who are employed. So just waiting for Abu. Hopefully I did remind him that we're starting at 7 p.m. UK time or 8 p.m. UTC. So hopefully he'll be joining us very shortly. But if you want to join the conversation in whatever way, and you've got anything you'd like to share after Abu has done his presentation, then obviously feel free to do that. And we'll see where we get. Hopefully we have a few Muslim viewers. Always appreciate having people with different points of view. No good having an echo chamber. So as long as we're all civil, we can profoundly disagree with each other. And I think it can be done in a spirit of honest conversation, which is something that doesn't always happen in Speaker's Corner. And obviously I have been critical of a few people that are regulars down in Speaker's Corner that potentially don't really want to have an honest conversation. And that's challenging for me. I had a conversation with somebody last Sunday that I didn't record. I won't mention names, but it was, again, somebody, and I blame myself. I certainly blame myself. I got in conversation with somebody who doesn't believe the earth is round. He didn't explicitly say that he was a flat earther until I accused him of it, quote unquote. And then when I asked him what he was, he didn't respond. He basically told me that he believes in evidence, etc., etc. And this wasn't a Muslim, by the way. This was somebody else, but wasn't prepared to give me an outright answer to the question, do you believe the earth is flat? I mean, I do think it's a pretty simple question. We have talked about it. You've probably seen a few videos. And one of the guys there is a really nice guy. And so, I was just happened to be chatting to him. And then one of his friends sort of joined the conversation and proceeded to tell me that there was no evidence, that he had emailed NASA, and because NASA hadn't sent him a photo of the entire planet Earth, there must be a conspiracy going on. And of course, wouldn't accept any photos of Earth from the Apollo missions, etc. Insisted that they should turn the Hubble Space Telescope around and take a photo of Earth. And because they hadn't done that, they were scared to do it, and there was conspiracy going on. I did point out that the Hubble is in low Earth orbit, and it's very unlikely to get an entire picture of the Earth in any way, since it's too close in orbit around the Earth. You need to be some distance away in order to get a picture of the Earth. This didn't faze this particular person. And by the end of the conversation, I pointed out that there was a lot of obscurantism going on, which he didn't appreciate. But ironically, he's the sort of person who'll point that out to other people, how they are employing sophistry, etc. And when I pointed that out, when I asked him a simple question as to whether he was a flat earther, because he obviously doubted the Earth being ellipsoid and oblate, I think the correct pronunciation is oblate ellipsoid, which is like a sphere, but it's obviously not exactly round, and it's squashed on the poles, so the equator is slightly elongated if you look at the Earth from the side, hence it being an oblate ellipsoid. And when I asked him what he was, he just, wouldn't say that he was a flat earther, but then took exception to me pointing it out to a bystander that he was a flat earther. So it ended up me at the end saying, basically, I wish I'd recorded this. This person then said, oh, well, you need my permission to record, to which I responded, no, I don't. If you're in a public place, you don't have a right to privacy. You don't have a right. I don't have to ask you whether I can record you. I will simply record you if I want to. The only time I need your sign-off is if I was going to make a commercial project out of it, in which case then I would need you to sign you're okay. And to which this person then sort of threatened me that in his world, without his permission, it would not be okay. And that's kind of how that conversation ended. So that's my concern sometimes in Speaker's Corner, is people not being honest and open, but I'm sure that'll be the case here. So, yeah, how can, BJ is asking, how much can a person really believe if they aren't willing to state it? Well, maybe he's just being the ultimate skeptic, believing that there's no evidence. You just have to look at the live stream from the ISS space station going around the Earth, which you can see on a very clear night. If you've got a powerful enough telescope, you can actually see it orbit the Earth. If you know where its orbit is going to be, you could actually see it. But he was trying to have his cake and eat it too, being on the fence, trying to be the ultimate skeptic about whether the Earth was round, and giving me reasons why he didn't believe, because NASA wouldn't send him a photo of the Earth. And when I pointed out that Apollo 8 had, I think it's Apollo 8, or was it Apollo? Yeah, I think it was Apollo 8 was the first Apollo mission to orbit the moon and return. They didn't land, obviously, and they took that wonderful photo of what's called Earth rising. So the picture of, the Earth coming up from behind the moon, so to speak. And when I pointed out that that was a photo of the entire planet, of course, that wasn't acceptable because that's a government organization. And so, this whole flat Earth is an unfalsifiable theory. No matter what evidence you bring to them, they've either got an answer, or if they don't have an answer, nothing's persuasive because it can all be a conspiracy. So, I'm kind of over talking about flat Earth. It was mildly amusing the first time I heard it. I wasn't sure that the person was, in fact, serious about it, but subsequent conversations has proven that he is serious, and he claims to be very skeptical. I mean, you can be ultimately skeptical. You can be skeptical of your entire existence. But when I ask what evidence would suffice, I don't get a clear answer. I get an answer of such a high bar for evidence that's basically unfalsifiable. Unless he goes up in a spaceship himself, he's not going to accept it. Well, I don't think there's much chance. So if that's the way you're going to insulate yourself with a belief, then you're welcome to it. Just don't consider that reasonable, or don't consider me or other people. We're not going to consider that to be a reasonable position to hold. So that's certainly one of the challenges I have. There are people that go there and either pretend to be ultimate skeptics, or go there and if you've been corrected on something, you really, if you're going to be intellectually honest, you're not going to go there and say that same thing again. I don't know if any of you have watched some of the videos on my Speaker's Corner UK channel. Who's that? Somebody's joined us. I can't see who it is. Nyam.
Ike.
There you go. How are you, my good sir?
I'm okay. I
thought.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't give a shit about religious feeling. No, I thought it would be better if you are not that alone.
Yes. So, well, thank you for joining me. I did email Abu earlier, and I did say we had a 7 p.m. start, or 8 p.m. UTC, because he's got a little presentation that we put off from last week when I had Ozzy on. I don't know if you were here, Ike, but that was really interesting. Hopefully Ozzy will come back again. Were you here last week? Did you manage to watch that episode?
Just the first 30 minutes or so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not so interested in that deep of philosophical, just thinking about it. In the end, I need something in the hands to work with it, because just thinking about things, I don't consider that very meaningful and very fruitful for actions.
Yes, I would agree with you to some point, because there's a point where things in principle are interesting to talk about, but then we have a practical life to live, and how do we live our lives? And I do think there's crossover though, and I think what Ozzy is so strong on is bringing the philosophical sense to a number of the religious arguments. So obviously some religious people come up with these arguments that are not easy to refute if you haven't heard them before. And so that's where sort of one of his strengths lies. But I agree with you. We've got to live in the practical world. So having ultimate skepticism or going very deep into philosophy sometimes isn't useful.
Exactly.
I mean, I get a few guys at Speaker's Corner sometimes, religious people, and I don't think they believe it anyway. But they come approach me as if they're the ultimate skeptics. How do I know anything? And that's an interesting philosophical point to a degree, but the term called solipsism, how can you prove that you exist, interesting to talk about for 5 minutes, but nobody lives their life that way. So, approaching it from that point of view, I don't think is particularly useful. But every now and again, I'll get somebody like that. Or they ask me, sometimes these Muslims, I don't know if they all learn from the same place, but they come along and ask, how do you know your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather existed? As if, there's some doubt as to whether I had a great-great-great-grandfather. The fact that I haven't seen that particular person, A, doesn't mean they don't exist, and B, we have a scientific process that could actually show us. So, we could have the DNA sequence if we had the grave of that particular person. We could have the bones exhumed and, that sort of thing. So I don't really know why they bring up that argument.
You hear that argument often or what?
Yeah, not that often, but every now and again, I'll have somebody, come and ask me, have you seen your great-great-grandfather? I don't, and I don't know why though, because I don't go down to Speaker's Corner and claim that just because I can't see God, he doesn't exist. I think that's a particularly futile argument, although one of my non-believing colleagues down there loves to go down and sort of heckle with that. I'm not sure he really believes it, but he'll go down there and say, well, where is your God? Where is your God? Show me your God. Now, just because somebody can't show you something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but he gets a little bit of pleasure out of saying that. It's not an argument that I would use, but sometimes they sort of bring the argument to me about, can't see my, do I know that my great-great-grandfather existed? Well, yes, because I'm here, apart from anything else.
Well, I had similar points pointed to me by the Ahmadiyya Imam from Zurich, the highest Ahmadiyya Imam in Switzerland. And he also brought the argument. In the end, it's about trust and who you can trust and what you can trust, etc. And he brought also the argument: how can you trust that your father is your father at all? And then he jumped in before I could answer, and he jumped in because your mother told you so. And I immediately said, well, I can't even be that sure that it is my mother, because nobody really remembers the first year of his life and the birth itself. So that is no argument at all to be in the field of trusting things and trusting people, because they don't think that clearly about those things.
Yeah. Welcome, GP. Good to see you here, sir.
Well, good evening. And I was thinking most of the chavs that appear on Jerry Springer's show will be able to say, I know who my father and mother and Nudge father is because of the DNA tests.
Yeah, that today you can test, of course.
Yes, that's not really a particularly useful question for any religious person to ask. How do you know your father's your father? Because we can do a DNA test, so we can get as close to irrefutable proof as humanly possible. It's like knowing that we exist. That's how good the evidence is now for that. But of course, to avoid that, they'll go back to your great-great-great, and you can keep saying great until you get tired of saying the word great, as if that somehow makes it any different that you had an ancestor which you would label a great-great-great-grandfather or mother. How do we know that? Because we know that that's how humans evolve.
Essentially, people who start disbelieving religious books do that, don't they? They trace back all of the claims made by the book, especially the ones with physical locations, and find out, did they exist? Did they get destroyed this way? For instance, it would be wonderful, and many Christians have tried, to find Noah's Ark, but they've not found it yet. They claim to, but they haven't actually. So if they ever did, they would be extremely happy. They could prove something.
Yes, if people have claimed that it's up there in one of the mountains in Turkey, and supposedly people have taken photos when the snow. Ararat, there you go. Yeah, and when the snow has melted, they've taken some sort of blurry photos. If the boat was in fact found, that would be a pretty significant find. We'd have scientists from all over the world looking at this to try and work out what this is, and could the Moses story be true? But even if it was, here's the amazing thing, even if the Moses story was true, does that mean that everything else around that story or anything else in the Bible is true? Well, no, not necessarily. It could be, but one story doesn't make everything true.
Wrong prophet. It was Noah.
Noah, thank you. Sorry. You're absolutely right.
I'm glad you're here drinking tonight.
And I don't drink, yes, there you go.
Oh, what a depressing week it has been with Islam.
Why? What has happened for you? What do you know about?
Well, I thought it was fake news to start off with, but this Baba Ali, this young 24-year-old Saudi girl who tried to get away from Saudi Arabia, got as far as the Philippines, where she was arrested by the security guards there because her father had said she'd left home without permission. And under Saudi law, women are property, or shall we say, not given autonomy ever. So because she is deemed to be a runaway and not responsible, the security guards handed her over to the Saudi embassy, who then tied her up like a chicken and bunged her on a flight back to Saudi.
Really?
Yeah, it was on Twitter, and I thought, hang on, this must be fake news, because why would the security guards give her a telephone to make a recording?
In which country was that?
The Philippines.
Philippines. Okay.
Yeah. And why would they give her a camera to record a help plea? And why would the police of the Philippines hand her over to somebody who aren't official Saudi police forces? But then Majid Nawaz, a couple of days later, wrote an article on the Daily Beast claiming it's a true story. This girl has gone completely missing. She's probably dead now. I mean, there was two reactions to her. There was the West, shall we say, saying, free this girl, don't imprison her, let her escape to Australia. And then you had all the Saudi Muslims saying, kill her, she must die, she has offended her father, she has dishonoured them. I mean,
it could be that they have. It could be that the Philippines and Saudi Arabia has a contract and law together that makes it possible.
They claim that she was also a thief. That was one thing I heard, but honestly, it's beyond belief. It really is beyond belief what went on. If it's true, and like I say, if Majid Nawaz says it's true, maybe it is.
Yes, normally he's got researchers and he's part of the Quilliam Foundation, so they're obviously looking into many of the claims that are made, because obviously there's going to be false claims, but there's also going to be a lot of true claims as well, and you've got to have people that can go and discern the difference somehow.
Yeah, but isn't it sad that so many of these Muslims were crying out for her death because she was trying to run away?
See, and this is the challenge that modern Muslims in the Western world face. They have their, let's call them co-religionists in the Middle East, who are not under any obligation or there's no pressure on them per se, especially the normal people, to update their beliefs in any way. So now you have Muslims that come to the West who are confronted with Western ideas and who are put under pressure, and I think rightly so, to suggest that, the West has a different view, and if you want to come to the West, you need to modify some of your beliefs. But now, of course, their co-religionists in the Middle East are not encumbered by this, and so they carry on doing what they always think is right, and now they're the co-religionists here in the West somehow have to defend or have to say to what's the word I'm looking for, they have to call out these people in the Middle East and saying, hey, they're not real Muslims, or we wouldn't be doing this, or whatever the case may be.
But it seems to be spread across the world, because the other case that came up was the young Muslim student was accused of blasphemy at a university. There's talk of him being an Ahmadiyyan. Anyway, he was accosted by over 1,000 Muslims who kicked him to death and then hung him. The police were too afraid to arrest anybody whilst they were doing the crime, but apparently 42 Muslims have been arrested for his murder.
Sorry, who was this guy?
Don't know his name, just know he was a young man, a student at a university who was accused of blasphemy.
Right. Which country?
Pakistan.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So
yeah, all that has to happen there is you need to just be accused, and your life's in danger.
It just seems we got this a total an oxymoron of saying this is a religion of peace, yet the followers are less than peaceful. In fact, they were more prone to violence and aggravation than one could possibly give credit to anybody.
See, that the challenge for any Muslim who goes, no, it is a religion of peace, or I'm a peaceful Muslim, and there are, plenty of peaceful Muslims. They're peaceful and they are good people to the extent that they do not take, the Quran literally. The more they take it literally, as we see in the Middle East and other places, the more they are not peaceful. They don't follow, let's say, accepted norms in the West, which we fought and died and spoken about and, had conversations for thousands of years.
It seems like it's outside of a religion. It reminds me of that Quatermass film, The Quatermass and the Pit, where you've got the devil trying to take over the world at the very end, and you've got half of these people running around killing the other half of the London community because one side are part of the locusts and from Mars, and the other lot are evolved monkeys. And it seems like that. There's just this mob mentality, a mob kill.
Yeah, I think
it's out of rationality. I just don't think you could say these people have thought of a book before they started doing it. They've just gone bang. They've just turned a switch, instant peace to killer.
Yeah, I don't think they would do that without some reason, though. So there's something underlying that. And so if you're brought up in a particular religion, whatever it is, Islam in that case or something else in some other case, it becomes, part of your DNA almost.
It's conditioning. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like a conditioning. They've been conditioned to react this way. And that seems beyond just a religion. That's like...
Well, I mean, the question to be asked is, what are they doing, or what did they do that Muhammad at some stage or his followers didn't do? So now if you can point out, and oftentimes Muslim apologists will point out that, hey, Muhammad never attacked or did anything. He was only defending. Now, when they say that, of course...
I would say Muhammad would offer mercy. That seems to be one of his foibles. He would occasionally ask people to... repent, and he would forgive them so as to look magnificent.
Where do you get that from?
Some of the deeds I've read him do, when he would go to a town before his army, he would send in a lone warrior to say, look, there's a huge army.
Yeah.
You've got a choice.
You have to stop there. He goes to a town with his army.
But,
that says everything.
He offers a choice.
How can it be a choice for showing him to be mercy if he invades another country? It's like defending the USA, which invades other countries, that the USA is the most holy and most moral country in the world, but they are invading things. So it doesn't seem right.
How about the one when he finally gets into Mecca and he summons that guy who wrote a few lines in the Qur'an, and he's sitting there before him, and Muhammad obviously wants him to get killed, but he doesn't say anything, so they're just sitting there. And then eventually the guy just gets up and walks away, and Muhammad turns around to his people and says, well, why didn't you kill him? And they said, well, we're waiting for a sign. And they said, like a wink. And he said, prophets don't wink. I mean, that was merciful. He could have said, kill him.
I'm not... Which story is that? I mean, have you got any... Is that a hadith, or is that in the Quran itself?
It's a hadith. It's a hadith. It's... there was a scholar who left Mecca to join Muhammad during his Medina years, and he used to transcribe some of the quotations of Muhammad, and he would put in his own words sometimes. That's the one I'm on about. You probably know him quite well, if I can remember his name, but I can't.
And in other hadith, he also commands killing of people who mock him just with words. And no, I mean, you can't defend Muhammad to be merciful, because there are more than enough hadith which shows the opposite thing.
Well, go on, honestly, maybe a Muslim will come on here and give us a verse where he's merciful. I thought he was at times.
I don't think it isn't very,
When he used to rob the
useful.
caravans, he would offer them mercy, wouldn't he? He would say, "You can come back to my camp and be Muslims, and then I don't have to kill you."
Yeah, sure. If that's your interpretation of merciful, then okay.
It's a different kind of mercy. It's a bit odd, but
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect Dick Turpin to say, "You can come back to my pub, and I'll let you become a bandit like me. You could be my Robin."
it's merciful if I raid your caravan and say, well, I I looted your things and now you have nothing, but I will not kill you if you want to be a Muslim. That's very merciful.
It took us about 1,000 years before we started to do the same thing and called it the European Committee.
Yeah, but the thing is, he is supposed to be the best, the superb human being for all time.
Yeah, I think that's the point, really, isn't it? Because yes, people have been unpleasant throughout history. We can all agree that. But I think the difference with Muhammad is he's still considered today to be a great example to Muslims. And I think that's where the problem. I don't think anybody considers Dick Turpin to be a great example of somebody to follow, in the Western world. So I think that's, as was quite rightly pointed out, that's the difference.
Well, there is a thing of hero worship. Who would you think is a hero? Could somebody say Donald Trump is somebody who you would follow and aspire to be like?
I don't think there's too many people. There are people that follow Trump, I guess, if I look at, people who are talking about it, because they're looking for change. And so they'll look for change with anybody. Would I follow him? No, I don't think he's a particularly clever.
He's supposed to be a very polite gentleman in company at a party.
I don't know him personally, but the reports and some of the live video I see.
He gives to charity. Could he not be another Muhammad, another person to emulate? He's only just dropped a few bombs here and there. It's not like he's doing anything which the North Koreans wouldn't do.
What do you mean with charity? The charity he gives his presidential budget money got to the parks, and the parks had to be closed because they don't get by the.
Apparently, he's come across individual cases where he found out about people becoming destitute and really falling on hard times. And the next thing they've known is he's gone away, but they've ended up with a check for $10,000 or more. He's done strange things like that.
I think that's just PR campaigns, and probably it's the same with Mohammed. The good things he did are probably just PR gags and to make him look very moral and good.
Anyway, speaking of PR campaigns, they've actually talked about why they bombed Afghanistan today. They did it because there's about 4 or 5 jihadist groups who were trying to get together to bond and to become a new super jihadi group. So they decided to take the opportunity to blow up one of them with this mother of all bombs.
Yes, I saw that. Them dropping that large bomb on them, etc. Yeah, obviously they think they've got justification for continually bombing there. I don't think there's anybody who claims that the West is perfect and that governments act in everybody's best interest. I don't think that's the case. I guess the question for me, to any Muslim or to anybody else for that matter, is where would you rather live? In which society would you rather live? Would you want to live in the West, i.e. let's say the US, the UK, France, Germany, whatever, or would you want to live in the Middle East or somewhere else? And the people that are over here seem to want to stay here. And it's a double-edged sword, because we obviously allow freedom of speech, so they can criticize in whichever way they want. And the same can't be said if you go to other lands in the world. So, and you can, and it's not just personal opinion. So when they do, when they have a look at countries more closely on different scales, be it technology, flourishing of the population, education, women's rights, etc., whatever it is they test, the best I've seen in the country index, which is a list of all the countries tested around the world, I think the first Muslim country was Qatar, or not Qatar. Was it Qatar? It could have been. I was surprised. And then I think it was the Philippines at around number 40 in the world. So, that's sort of where they come in when you look on a societal level, putting the government to one side, just the well-being of the population generally.
Oh yes, there's apparently quite a bit of angst going on there between the peasants of the UEA and Saudi, because the UEA princes tend to look after their population better and they're a bit more richer than the Saudi ones, who are kept like peons.
So which country is that?
United Arab Emirates versus Saudi.
Right. I mean, the
way the princes are treating their people, giving them money and opportunities, is causing a bit of a disparity and a bit of dislike towards the regimes. The Arabs, the Emirates, having a better reputation with their civilians, as opposed to Saudi, who's sort of like resenting the fact that these royals are, they're doing quite well for themselves out of the oil money, and then the civilians aren't.
Yes, well, I mean, the oil's going to eventually run out, and then what's going to happen to the Saudis? The only reason they've got money, the only reason they can flaunt it, is because there was, call it, black gold under the sand that they wouldn't have known about if they were still riding the camels. And so you had helpful Western people come in and find this oil that pushed industry, and hence that's why Saudi Arabia's got a lot of money. Otherwise, they'd be floating around in their tents and camels and everything else, because they had no use for it. They didn't even know what it was. They didn't drill for oil. And so, it's just happened to be their luck that something valuable was found under their quote territory, and I think that's often forgotten. A question here from Fee. Do you club everything as East versus West, Rob? As in, can West be different in US, UK to the Nordic country? Likewise, East might be different from, say, India to China. ME is different. Yeah, no, I'm not classing it East versus West. When I say West, I guess I'm thinking Europe and North America, as opposed to other countries in the world. Now, there may be other countries in the world that are similar or close to those sort of societies, freedom of speech, the flourishing of the population, equal rights, etc., etc. I'd be interested if people point them out. I haven't got the Good Country Index in front of me, but what's definitely appears to be the case is there's not a single Islamic country in the top 40. And so, just from a practical point of view, that demonstrates that, either there's a problem or it's not, as ex-Kabar said here, I would rather live in an Islamic country run under real Islamic laws and without the West bombing us for practicing our religious practice. Well, I guess maybe ex-Kabar can share with us what real Islamic laws are and how they would be in any way superior to what we have in the West. I don't claim that the West is perfect, but I do claim that it's the most superior current societies on the planet. That doesn't mean that we can't improve greatly, but find me a country or a society that's better. And what I mean by the West, as I say, is Europe and North America, and perhaps Australia and a few other countries like that. But if there is a better country and we can investigate that, I'm happy to go. There's a better country. I don't see it at the moment.
Ex-Kabar is a hypocrite. I mean, he is talking about Islamic law, and the country also don't have to be bombed by the US. Go to Saudi Arabia. I mean, really, be honest and don't talk shit about. I rather stay in the country I am right now because it's more safe and it's not Islamic enough. I mean, what's the logic about that? If you want more Islamic law, go to Saudi Arabia. It is not being bombed by the US. So he's just a liar.
Well, what I want to know is what is real Islamic law? If it's not any of the current Islamic countries and it's not in the West, then what exactly is it? Is it something fictional that we don't know about? Tell me what it is, because all you're saying is what it isn't. That doesn't help us.
It's just a useless saying by him. He doesn't have any attributes. He just wants to make a point about the US bombing in general and about the West being not moral enough, whatever is moral speaking. I mean, he's just a useless guy. He makes every Sunday I'm looking into the Jinn&Tonic show. The last 7 or 8 weeks he makes same stupid, nonsensical comments about things. And he doesn't stay behind his comments, because 5 minutes later he just forgot his own comments, and he gets called out liar, and he doesn't like to be called out liar. Even he got caught.
I mean, Islamic law is a bit of an oxymoron anyway, because you've got 3 different religions that are ascribed to the Abraham faith, but each one has its own set of laws. A true Islam would have followed on from all of the laws from the preceding 2, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, Muhammad is supposed to be the perfect example for people to follow, because if you just had the Quran, I was reading something today, if you just follow the Quran, that on its own is not going to give you a full, quote, Islamic view. So you need the hadith and you need the surah, the biography of Muhammad. You need to understand more to it, which of course Muslim people are sort of taught as they grow up. So they taught all of these things, and of course the Quran is the central part, but there's moving parts around that as well. And so it's not just the Quran itself, otherwise you wouldn't have the 5 pillars of Islam, etc., etc. So there's a lot more to it than just that. But if you follow, it's relatively easy. If you know what Muhammad did, then you can follow his example, which millions of Muslims apparently do in the Middle East. Now in the West they're a bit more cagey about following his examples, like marrying a child, etc., etc. But in the Middle East they don't have a problem with that. It's quite clear. That's what it says in the hadith and the Quran, and that's what we follow. If he's the example, we follow it. Over here they try and tap dance around that and find ways not to want to accept that directly, because of course they're going to be called out for it. Simon Jones is saying in the comments there, laws in the UK are fluid and are refined. Islamic Sharia law is fixed and cannot adapt. So that's certainly one way to look at it. But we often get called out. I don't know your views. I'd like to get your view, GP, and your view, Yam, for
it's a basic principle in English law, which I define to West, is that it's the law of the individual, the law of Magna Carta. A theocratic system doesn't have that. The individual doesn't count. It's the God who is ruler. It's the God who makes the laws. It is the God who is above everybody else. Yet, under Magna Carta, even God is equal. There is no exceptions. There is no divine right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously
doesn't have the Queen more rights in the UK?
No, that was the whole point of Magna Carta, because the King John I, he wanted to extort more taxes from the nobles, and the nobles said no. We had we had old customs and traditions where the king would not be able to just suddenly extort money just because he wanted to start a war. We want to have these old customs and traditions and practices brought back to the United Kingdom, the old Saxony ways. And so they went to war against King James, and eventually they made him sign Magna Carta, which said that the king was no longer above
but
everybody else.
I mean in practice, not on paper. On paper, everything is different on paper. If the Queen kills somebody,
in practice, no, if the Queen kills someone, she'll be liable to the law just as anybody else was. But in practice, also,
you will never see a cell from inside. If she kills somebody,
she'd have to do it for an act of war.
Come on, should be real on this issue.
If she broke the law of the land, the Parliament,
she is the
Queen. No, she isn't.
Okay.
She can make vetoes to the law under some of the terms and conditions that were arranged when James II came to power after Oliver Cromwell and his son passed away. But no, the Queen is not above the law. Nobody is. That's the whole point of the Magna Carta and subsequent laws. But there is only one exception that I know of where parliamentarians are above the law, They are exempt from libel with parliamentary privilege, but only in Parliament. When they're speaking in their official capacity as parliamentarians in the House of Commons, they are able to say things which could be libelous and not be prosecuted for it.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
They say outside, then they will be prosecuted like anybody else. But they're allowed to say it in the House of Lords.
Rob, you have
And-
a question.
Yeah, I think
Why didn't you discuss atheism with Brother Mansour?
Oh, because he was on the platform doing a speech with Paul last Sunday. Plus, I was involved in other conversations anyway. You can't really have a discussion with somebody on a ladder, in any case. So I'll catch up with him at some point where he and I can discuss things. It's just standing there having that conversation. So yes. I'll happily have a conversation with Mansour. There's plenty to talk about with Mansour. I've seen quite a few of his videos that I disagree with, various points. So I'll be happy to speak to him when we get a chance. I mean, Speaker's Corner, especially when it gets busy, is bigger than what most people think. You've been there, Ike, yourself, so if you get into a conversation with somebody else, then you look for somebody else. They're already in another conversation. So it's not like you just wander up, somebody standing there waiting for you to walk over to them. People are often involved in different conversations. So you've just got to wait until you find somebody. It doesn't always happen that you can do that every single Sunday. Sometimes people aren't there. If they are, they're on a, so it's not a case of, if somebody's there, you're guaranteed that you can get a chance to speak to them. I mean, you can be rude and go and push people out the way. But that if they're regular people, I just wait until, we bump into each other and we have the opportunity, or I go look for them if I see them, if I know they're there. So yeah, we'll definitely have conversation, and I'll do my best to record whatever it is.
You could always do what, what's his chappie's name? That Birmingham bloke.
The rationalizer?
Yes, that's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
You could hold a live Google YouTube discussion. He's done that with some of them, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd happily do that, but I just don't know anybody that wants to have the live thing. I mean, Saracen's been on. I haven't seen him recently. Kabara's here, but I don't know if he wants to join. So, we'll happily have, those sort of discussions, because sometimes, you can't get to speak, or people are a long way away, or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I mean, I'd happily do it. It's just, finding the people to talk to and a particular subject to talk about. So I'll happily do it. Doesn't have to be the Jinn&Tonic show. I can run a live one from the Speaker's Corner UK channel as well.
I think the only real question that needs to be answered nowadays is, why do you do it?
Why do I go to Speaker's Corner?
Well, yes. Why do you go to Speaker's Corners? Why do they want to proselytize, or dawah, as they call it? What's the point?
Two separate questions. I mean, for them, my observation is that obviously they believe they have the one true faith, and they want to spread that to everybody, and they think anybody who doesn't have that is going to burn in hell. So there might actually be some of them who are trying to do it for that particular reason.
No, but what's in it for them?
Well, I guess it's almost like a reward for them, bringing more people into the fold. They feel like they've done a good thing. I don't know if there's anything specific in the Quran that says they'll be rewarded for bringing more people into Islam. I'm not sure on that.
I reckon if they were able to get Tony Blair converted into Islam, they'd lose more people. I mean,
they will get reward. Hasn't that point? I mean, that's of course, that's the reason why they say every time after they call Muhammad, peace be upon him. No, peace, but peace. But that's just gathering points. I mean, they really believe that.
It's just like a point system. Everything has to be greeting stamps.
Well, there Kabara is saying dawah is a duty for every Muslim. What does that mean, Kabara? What do you mean by a duty? Is it something that you must do? Is it something that you can choose to do? And if so, what is the ultimate outcome for you? So maybe you can respond when you get a chance. But for me personally, the reason I go is because I want to understand what people believe and why. And if I see bad arguments, or if I see something that I perceive to be negative, then I want to highlight that and discuss it and hopefully refute it if that's possible. But I don't go there claiming that I know everything.
Does it? Doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, did you see the three atheists who went to Australia, and they're sitting outside the pub or somewhere? It was Ara and Matt Delahue, I think his name is, and somebody else, and they're sitting around. They were just hearing some Christian evangelizing in the distance, and they turned around to each other, and one of them said, "Can you name me one time when anyone was converted by hearing that crap?" And I certainly can't think of anyone who got converted by hearing a street preacher.
Sorry, it sounded like you were saying two different things. Are you saying that there's no good reason for me to go, or there's no good reason for them to proselytize?
There's no good reason for you to go. You find out what their faults are. You correct their faults, but they ain't going to change, are they? So
Well, I don't expect them to, but I do think, and I have heard some people have approached me quietly, and I've had emails, and famous atheists get hundreds of emails from people who have doubted, who have left the faith, who have gone, hang on a moment, I used to believe X, I heard what you said, I looked into it myself. That's all I want. I want people to go and look at it critically. And my claim is...
You've only really given them permission to do what they wanted to do in the first place.
Well, most of them don't think critically. In fact, I would go further and say there isn't a single religious person on earth who thinks critically enough. If they did, they wouldn't be religious. But putting that aside, I'm bringing a point of view, or I'm questioning it so that they can think critically. And those people who are on the edge or who are on the fence, who are going, you know what, I'm not sure whether this is true. I've heard Rob, or I've heard whoever it is, and whatever the case may be, I'll go and look into that. And so those are the people that I'm interested in getting to think more deeply about it. If they come back and they still think, you know what, it's right, then at least they've done more of a research. I still don't think they've evaluated critically enough, but at least there's an opportunity for them to hear it differently.
It's a bit late, though. I mean, the ones you're talking to are adults. Wouldn't you be better off talking to 7-year-olds through to 12-year-olds?
Well, no, because they're going to have adults around them and they're going to be influenced, but B, they don't have the critical faculties to do that. You do need somebody in their late teens, early 20s at least to have the critical faculties. That's when they're getting
indoctrinated, isn't it? That's when the barrier, the God meme is firmly entrenched into these youngsters.
Yeah, but there's nothing I can do about that, and it's not my place to do something about that. I mean, imagine,
I can see why not. Why not? I mean, if you've got all these religious preachers and imams being able to go into school to preach, and you've had people doing these Dawah things, where they've been able to go into different schools as charities and preach, why not you on behalf of rationality and science? If you've got the courage to be able to speak publicly, and you're not tongue-tied like I am, then wouldn't it not be a good idea to do what they're doing, but for the atheist side of things, for rationality, for science, wave the banner, the flags of democracy?
Sure, if there's finances to do that, I'm happy to do that. I can speak in public, as I have done there. I've spoken many times in public, so I'm not afraid of doing that. I'm also not afraid of being wrong. I'm not the most knowledgeable person, but I do learn. I do go and think about things. But there's funding and so forth. So there's a lot of practical impediments to atheists doing that. And that is a strength of organized religion, is that they can have funding. There's a whole group there. They become communities. After Speaker's Corner every Sunday, a whole bunch of the Muslims go. I went once with them. They all go and have dinner to go and talk about, their day, I guess. We as atheists don't do that. And so in some ways, religion has got its strength. There's, and we can point to it begrudgingly and say, oh, they're all a bunch of sheep, but there is strength in numbers and we're more like cats. So we go and do our own things and then wonder why, we don't have the political or any other persuasion that they do, because we don't all agree on things. We all go in our separate directions. So yes, in a perfect world, if somebody tomorrow said to me, Rob, I'll give you £1 million. I want you to go to the schools, or I'll be off tomorrow and go and do exactly what they do. But I've got to run a business. I have a family, etc. And so practically I can't do that. But in theory, yes, I would. Definitely I'd go and do that. And I'd debate them wherever I could find them. I'd go into schools and I'd ask young children to think critically. I'd bring different points of view. Of course I can do that. But on a practical level, that's not possible. Whereas these people are funded, they get donations, etc., so they can go and sit and do this all day. So that the good thing for us is, for me, or my personal view, is that we have truth on our side, and I don't believe they do. So no matter what they have, I think at some point in the future, that's my, maybe idealistic view, is the truth will prevail. So it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, etc. You just need some intelligent people to criticize it, which hopefully some of us do. And it doesn't matter how much funding you've got. truth can't be overridden. So, have I got more funding? Yep, I'd go and do all of these things, no problem at all. I'd bring in all the top people, bring more people like Phil, bring Ozzy, bring Aaron Ra, Matt Dillahunty, all the Sam Harris, whoever it may be, that's much smarter than me. Bring all of those people. I'd have them over here every month, to come and debate and do all of that stuff. But you need money for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Don't you mean reality instead of truth?
What do you mean there?
I mean, truth is what you think is true. It doesn't have to be a reality, because a Muslim can pursue himself to believe things are true, and he can call these things true. I personally wouldn't call it true, but truth beside or behind us, but instead take the word reality.
Oh, so you mean we've got reality on our side and they don't? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because the word truth, at least in German, implies that you have something. It has something to do about your consciousness and your awareness of the world around you, and probably you can see things. You can see color, but still things are in reality colorful, etc.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, I do believe that to the degree that we are able and that we have scientific inquiry, our view on the world, our worldview as non-believers tracks reality better than people who do believe.
You have to be looking at the box from the same angle. Otherwise, it's like the elephant problem, where if you view the elephant from different angles, you see different aspects of the elephant, and one of those aspects might be your religion. So you've got to see the elephant from the same angle to be able to see it's really an elephant and not something else.
So give me an example of what you mean, GP, in practical terms.
Well, I'll give you an example in practical terms to destroy it. In science, salt water and water do mix. So when a religion tells you, like Islam, that it doesn't, you can hold up a jug of each, mix them together and say, hello, yes, they've mixed. Obviously, your religion is wrong.
Oh, yes. I think from a scientific point of view, whenever the Qur'an makes claims,
you've got to see it from the same viewpoint. Because the religion of Islam would say, but there is a coastal waters where the tides are such that the salt water runs underneath and the fresh water runs over the top, and they don't mix.
Well, I'm sure we can test those sort of things. And
No, it's true. It is actually true. Off the Arabian coast, they do have these sort of like tidal abnormalities. They do eventually mix together, but for certain parts of their travelling, they don't. It's where the
what do you mean by that's you don't have to go into such stupid things. I mean, water it is made of molecules, and these molecules mix into each other in the even in the first meetings. The salt molecule goes to the water without salt. I mean, that's just. I mean, how can you argue with people who claim such things and other who take this for serious? I mean, that's.
Well, they just seen it. Well, the person who wrote the book, the Qur'an, obviously saw this physical thing happening and wrote something stupid based out of it. But if you looked at it from science, you know that what was written wasn't the full explanation of why the two substances weren't mixing, why the water and the salt water weren't mixing. It was because of tidal movements were stopping them from mixing at that certain point. But if you got to a place where the tides pressures were not so different, they started mixing, and that will be the science. You have to view from science to prove science, but if you're going to prove something from religion, you have to come from a religious side, which might give you the wrong answer.
Well, we can't really come from a religious side to prove religion, because that's circular, isn't it? So what we do have is a scientific method, which in principle, if not in practice.
That's what religious people do, don't they?
What do they do?
they say from a religious point, this proves our God. They say God made all the flowers because all the flowers are there. Therefore, God must have made them because it's what God does. He makes green roots and flowers. But a biologist would come from a biological.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
people, you seem to be saying, or you did say, or maybe I misunderstood you. You were saying, no, we need to come from their point of view. Well, obviously, we as non-believers don't. We come from.
No. I was saying you have to get them into the same viewpoint. You have to bring them to use science to look at the problem and not religion as they are using.
You both are wrong. I mean, it depends on the topic. If he just claims about spirituality and claiming about what God would want, etc., I mean, you can take it on a philosophical way and talk about it all day long. But if a Muslim claims something that is testable, that is provable, that is able to look into it, this issue, this topic, then you of course have more in your hands and look into things and prove to even to a Muslim if he makes a claim about something testable.
Sure. Welcome, Abu.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
You started an hour late. I did send you an email to say 7 p.m., eh?
Ah, okay. So you've already been talking for...
Yes, yeah, because we're in summertime now, and I guess you guys are too. It starts an hour earlier our time.
I thought you started late because I came in at 7 and there was nobody here, so I went off and played a game.
No, I was just a minute late because I got the message and my thing was an hour behind. Anyway, Abu, welcome. You are here to share something that I had postponed with yourself that we can perhaps have a conversation. Have you got something ready you want to start with?
Yeah, but I mean, maybe if you're already gone on for...
No, it was more sort of random. We were talking about different things, so there wasn't a particular topic. I've got something in mind that I just saw in the chat that we can talk about, but if you've got a presentation you want to give and then we can talk about afterwards, we can certainly do that.
No, I made a preparation about this, about Khawarij.
Remind me what that is, just to preface it.
Khawarij is an early sect that existed in early Islam, like in the time of Uthman and Ali and so on. And there are many hadith about it. The reason why I wanted to bring this up was because Saracen has this idea that Wahhabis are Khawarij. So maybe Saracen is not here today anyway, so maybe it's better we postpone it, maybe.
Oh, you can answer me. Is this like those guys that the companions had slaughtered because they were teaching a peaceful form of religion?
No, they were not peaceful at all. They went against Uthman and Ali and so on. But I don't know.
Oh, they went against them. So they weren't Sunni and they weren't Shia. There was a third party completely.
Yes, they were the first sect of Bid'ah. They were the first sect of...
Oh, they must have been a bloodthirsty lot, this lot.
Yeah. But they are like in a category of themselves. But I don't know, I think maybe it's better we postpone it because I don't think Saracen is here, and if you're already gone on for an hour, it's going to be very late. If
Okay, we can
start
keep
a
it
new
for next
topic.
week. So if you put it onto the once I set up the one for next week, if you put it for the title for next week, and
Yeah.
let's see if Saracen's around. I mean, we have got some other Muslim viewers. I wish a few of them would come on. I'll make sure that they are treated well, as well as one can, because obviously we want to hear people, and if we can, like I said at the beginning of the show, we can profoundly disagree, but we can be civil about it. We can even say they're stupid or they're talking nonsense, and they can say the same to us. But what we're really talking about is ideas and not the person particularly. Now, the person may have some programming running in their brain, But ultimately, we're all running with ideas that we've borrowed from somebody else. There's very few of us that have come up with original ideas. So what we have in our heads is ideas that we've picked up from somewhere over the last couple of thousand years that have been improved upon, and that's what we currently are renting in our heads. And so that's really what we are talking about. Speaking of which, somebody was talking about in the chat here, and I thought I'd talk about that again, slightly in a different way. One of our Muslim viewers has talked about, hate. If that hate that you instigate stopped at the place of debate, then everything would be fine. So there's still this, in my view, there's still a pernicious belief around hate speech. And I want to get your guys' view on this. What is your view on this? And I know, GP, you've sort of had some views on this in the past, but maybe you can articulate them specifically in regards to hate speech. I'll quickly look it up while you guys offer your views on what you think, because some religious people, and in particular because we're in the UK, I see it with Muslims talking about hate speech and how, if we're pointing things out that some Muslims do overseas, that somehow is tantamount to hate speech, and that's, that makes it bad for Muslims living in this country. So I wonder if you could talk about hate speech.
Hate speech. What do you...
Hate speech.
But what is this?
It was in the chat. In the chat, I think Rakib Bangalip demanded to be less hate speech in the UK or something like that. And I replied to him. For him, if I hurt his very, very important religious feelings, everything is hate speech.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really a European thing, hate speech. I think it came from the liberals. It started off with a
hate speech.
It's not saying anything that would incite violence or harm to other people. I mean, when I was growing up as a lad, I would go to a concert, and the front man of the band might say something like, we hate the, and then after the gig, people would go out and beat up the because
but look, there's
that was
a difference with hate speech. It sounds very like diffuse. If you say like incitement of violence, that I can.
Yeah, but now it's about being offended. It's been morphed over the last 30 years.
That you can interpret how you want. You can say, if you say banana, maybe I'm offended.
Yeah, it's absolutely silly how.
Well, let's bring it up here and let's have a look and see what Wikipedia has to say of all things. Hate speech is speech which attacks a person or group on the basis of attributes such as gender, ethnic origin, religion, race, disability, or sexual orientation. In the law of some countries, hate speech is described as speech, gesture, or conduct, writing, or display which is forbidden because it incites violence or prejudicial action against or by a protected group or individual on the basis of their membership to that group, or because it disparages or intimidates a protected group or individual on the basis of their membership to the group. The law may identify a protected group by certain characteristics. In the law of other countries, hate speech is not a legal term. In some countries, a victim of hate speech may seek redress under civil law, criminal law, etc. A website which uses hate speech may be called a hate site. Most of these sites contain internet forums and news briefs that emphasize a particular viewpoint. So even sort of just looking at that, it's still very broad. Let's go to the UK. I guess that might be useful.
You could see right at the very first paragraph how it's changed from one thing to another. If you go, can you go back to the very first paragraph? The first sentence is what it's now become. The second sentence is what it used to be. In other words, the second sentence say speech, gesture, or conduct, blah, 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 incites violence or prejudicial action. But the first sentence says speech which attacks a person or group based on attributes, such as religion. And that's got nothing to do with inciting violence. That's just saying you've offended somebody in the first sentence. And in the second sentence, it says you're actually asking people to beat people up.
Yeah, I think we already had laws that prevented, incitement to violence. would have been probably the term that I remember it being called originally.
I
So
think it was originally disturbing the peace, but there was many loopholes to get out of. That's why they brought in this hate speech discrimination. It's the English law, like I say, it does adjust over time, and there's always loopholes, and Parliament will bring in new laws to try and plug the gaps. But sometimes you get parliamentarians doing things like they did in Canada and bring out that M103 and say it's Islamophobia and shit like that.
So here in the UK, in the United Kingdom, several statutes criminalise hate speech against several categories of persons. The statutes forbid communication which is hateful, threatening or abusive, and which targets a person on account of disability, ethnic or national origin, nationality, race, etc. The penalties for hate speech include fines, imprisonment, or both. Legislation against sectarian hate in Scotland, which is aimed principally at football matches, does not criminalise jokes about people's beliefs nor outlaw harsh comment on their religious faith. So that's just a small part of the UK version of it.
Yeah, but it grew up. I mean, it really doesn't expand into it. I mean, it first started off with things like the Sex Equality Acts, then the Disability Acts, and then they had the Race Acts. It had to be brought up one stage at a time because English law has to be incredibly precise or it doesn't work. That's why we have all these silly idiots being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to sit in Parliament to make these laws. They're supposed to be experts.
So what are your thoughts, guys, in terms of, quote, hate speech, either the first paragraph or this paragraph? Does anybody think that we need some kind of hate speech, particularly against a religious group, because that's obviously what we're talking about in this case? So is it possible, I guess, is my question, if we go back to the top here, is it possible to attack a person with speech? And if so, how?
Bullying? Dogpiling?
No, I mean, let's stay on the level of the law in general. If a law prohibits a certain thing, then you take this law. But just to take a Wikipedia article, I don't think that serves us really good, because in Wikipedia, really anybody with enough power, enough level credibility can write anything in it. And the thing is, a religion person, of course, sees it as an attack if you say something that goes strictly against his personal beliefs. Like last time I was here, and Saracen was also here, and he was so hurt. What was it? What's the best word for
his
it?
feeling.
Upset?
Not only that, but really upset, but on a way more higher level, because that I showed Muhammad as a picture in here, and Abu censorship me here, so that I also want to remember everybody that Saracen cherry-picked the hadiths to prove his already established belief, and I more or less said, well, I don't take your belief, your hadith choosing as my hadith choosing, because this about not drawing a Muhammad hadith or not drawing in general, I don't take it serious, etc. And he was very badly hurt by just a drawing, and I think it already considered to a certain level as hate speech, and
Can I practice some things that you said? There are many things.
No, you censorship me.
You
Okay,
are
no,
oppressing us.
No, look, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't want to censorship you. I think it's silly that he became so upset. That was just a pragmatic move, because otherwise I was worried that the debate would get stuck and he would just leave, and then we wouldn't have answered any questions. So I agree, it's silly that he became so upset. When it comes to hadith, it's still not really clear how he comes to the conclusion that a hadith is sahih. He probably has some kind of his own kind of it's not really Ash'ari, because Ash'ari madhab are very, very similar to Ahl Sunnah when it comes to establishing what if a hadith is sahih. And I'm not even sure it's Maturidi, and I wouldn't even say it's Hanafi. I'm not even sure that he knows what he considered to be a sahih hadith. But he is free to come back to the show and tell us there. So that was a hard decision, was a pragmatic one, but I didn't censor you. I just promoted my the Jinn&Tonic show image. But if you want to show that now, I mean, you can show it. That was a pragmatic move. But
no, I don't really care about Rabbi Muhammad. It was just to show the point that he's cherry picking hadiths in the show, and that's the thing here right now about. I mean, if a religion person sees something that upsets him, for him it's already some kind of hate speech, and he probably would like to see me in jail for even showing a picture of something called Muhammad. I mean, nobody never seen Muhammad. So.
But he said something. He said that mutawatir, that he agrees that mutawatir is correct, and that is quite good, because I have found a list of all mutawatir hadiths. But I can on the hadith of the day I can read a mutawatir hadith, and then we can see if he likes it.
Yeah, keep on to that. I think just going back to what you were talking about there, I think we all have our different approaches in terms of interacting with people. And obviously what I would like for this show is for more Muslims to come on here, that we can have the discussion. And that doesn't mean that we need to censor ourselves. And at the same time, I think in order to have a discussion, it's the way one presents oneself, you know. Now, I know Ike might be a little bit more forceful in that he thinks it's all bullshit and he's just going to say bullshit straight out, which is fine. And if we don't want this to be an echo chamber, then I think, you know, there's a level of, I don't know how to put it, just having some kind of a conversation where we're not chasing people away. Now, one can always turn around and go, hey, do you know what? They soft-skinned, they should just be able to take it, etc. And I agree to a point.
I have to stop you there. I don't say it's everything bullshit, but so far I've seen from any Muslim I've talked to my whole life, any argument, it was just in the end, if I looked into it, it was just bullshit. I mean, either the arguments are bullshit and they have no new one, they can't make any new one, so it will stay bullshit, or something comes up and I have to say, well, fine, that's a good argument that I can take it serious and we can talk about it. But so far I have never seen really any argument that I couldn't call it bullshit. And I don't see personally, I mean, I'm not taking over the Jinn&Tonic show or something like that. I don't see the point to petting Muslims and to make it them comfortable to come into the show. Either you are a believer and stay to your beliefs, or in my opinion, you can fuck off. Just that simple it is. Yeah. If you can't take it, I mean.
Obviously, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Somebody asked me in the chat there, Sharif's asked, Rob, why do you want to talk to Muslims? And the answer is because they make claims about reality. They have beliefs that inform actions, which I find problematic. So I want to know why they believe what they believe and have they got good reasons. And so far, I agree with Ike that I haven't seen any good reasons. But I think the way to move forward is to have some kind of a dialogue, because we can just call everybody out and say they're all talking bullshit. They can tell us we're talking bullshit, and then there's no conversations. And the way I notice that things move forward is through some kind of a conversation. And I agree with you. It's not about making this like a little child playground where nobody feels offended. Definitely not. But I think there's also a degree of, you know, not going to the point where it's because it's in the tone. Now, because I've done some NLP and I've done coaching and I've done public speaking to a point, it's the way it's delivered. It's not necessarily what you say, but it's the way you say it, whoever it might be. And there's just different ways that you can say the same thing, that you can carry on a conversation. Because as you know, Ike, when you went down to Speaker's Corner, you were very in the face of a lot of Muslims, and they broke off the conversation very quickly. And these are people that have been there for years. This wasn't just one or two people. And that approach could work in certain circumstances. But if you want to have a longer conversation to understand what people believe, whether you believe it's bullshit or not, then having the very blunt approach might not work in some circumstances. That's all I'm saying.
What's the useful thing in a conversation about things you already know? You personally, a person makes a conversation in general, makes a conversation with anybody else to learn things. And if you have a conversation about things you already know, and you already heard many times these things the other person in front of you claims and talks about you, I mean, I don't see the point in wasting your time for things you already know, and because a Muslim you can't convert just in a dialogue, and I don't think it's very useful to make a dialogue just for the sake of the dialogue itself, to be nice. And I mean, either you have in the end something of value, and you can work in the future with this, and you grow with this new information, or you just, well, want to debate and make points, and other people around you clapping who makes the better points. I mean, I just don't see the good thing in conversation of topics you already have approached many times with other people before.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the outcome. And I think you've made a good point in the sense that what is the goal? What is the outcome to have a conversation, particularly if you've had it before? And everybody might be different. And I appreciate you've probably done this a lot longer than I have, and you've heard it many times. And so for you, it's probably a broken record. And I think the difference for me is I'm not there to persuade my interlocutor to change their mind. I have no illusion that they're going to change their mind. They're probably going to walk out of there feeling even more certain after the conversation, ironically enough, than before. My outcome, the goal for me to continue having these conversations, because they keep bringing the conversation, and there are people watching either live at Speaker's Corner or on the internet who are hopefully taking this in. And my hope is that there's certain people who are questioning, who are on the fence, who are not so dogmatically committed that nothing can change their mind. And they are the sort of people that I would like to have happen through conversations I record or conversations I'm involved in, where they go, do you know what, I heard what Rob said, and I didn't know, and I went to go and have a look, and you know what, either I've strengthened my belief, hopefully ideally not, or I'm questioning it even more. Those are the sort of people. And there's 1.5 billion people out there, and okay, maybe let's say 100 million on the internet or whatever. I want to reach more of those people and have them be more critical of what they believe. That's my outcome. And so I will continue to have the conversation, even if I've had it 10 times before, because it could be I just say something different in that moment, and it strikes a chord with somebody somewhere else in the world. That's my hope, because I don't expect, for example, Ali Dawah to change his mind, but I do hope and expect that if I have 10 conversations, on the 10th one, somebody watches it, I say something different, he makes a stupid point or whatever the case is, and that changes somebody's life in some way. And if that happens, then I'm happy. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Sometimes somebody might send me an email. On rare occasions, people will approach me, not to the level of Sam Harris or any of these people that get hundreds, if not thousands, of emails a day. But that would be a job well done for me, where I've interacted and somebody's become more critical and ideally has left or has seriously questioned what they believe. And that for me is the reason I do it. And everybody can have their own thing. I don't make anybody else's wrong, but that's the reason I will still do it and still have these conversations. If tomorrow Muslims stop coming to Speaker's Corner and said, you know what, we're going to keep it to ourselves, perfect. Then I'm okay. But that doesn't happen. And as
they can't. They are commanded. I mean, look at my picture. They are commanded to do dawah in the Quran. They can't stop.
Well, there you go. And so I'm on the opposite end of that. And so I'm going to continue questioning it, because I've never heard a good answer like you have. And I think some of it is actively incorrect, dishonest, or actively negative. And so that's what I'm there to counter to whatever degree. And I haven't heard it all, and maybe you have, but I haven't heard it. Every now and again I hear something different, and I'll go away and think about it or research something or find something out. By no means am I an expert in any field. So when Phil came down to Speaker's Corner, I was listening to everything about cosmology, for example, or whatever it might be. Or when Ozzy was on last week, I was listening. That's why I didn't have anybody else on the show. I didn't want interruptions. I want to learn from other people who are experts. and that's the way I can gain my knowledge, and that's the way I can then question these people who come with what I think are at the very best questionable beliefs and reasons, etc. So yeah, everybody's different, but I'll continue doing it until maybe I get tired of doing it.
I was also quite polite in the beginning of my research in religion, and particularly in Islam, etc. But at a certain point, you like I said, you pretty much heard everything and every arguments more than often enough, and then you just like you said many times, then the penny drops, and it will. I'm certain it will come a point, if you stay long enough with the topic of Islam and religion, it will come a point where the penny drops, and you just don't care about their feelings. Really, you just have no respect for their dawah on the streets and their excuses, and it will come at the point, if you continue to research this whole religious stuff.
Yeah, definitely it could be. I don't have respect for ideas anyway. I do respect people in and of themselves, and I think, if I use an analogy, I think religious people in general, and not all of them, but as a general rule, they're running an operating system like I compare it to a computer. They're still running a DOS operating system. Those of us who remember the 80s with the DOS command line operating system, and some of us have moved on to a Mac OS. And so, you can only go so far with a DOS operating system, and you need to upgrade your software, for want of a better word. And so I don't have respect for beliefs, but I do have respect for people, because I think they're just renting these ideas. They just haven't upgraded their software. And maybe that sounds condescending. It's not meant in that way. And when I hear responses to me, I just, in my mind, I go, they're still running an operating system that's out of date. And so they need to update the operating system. Otherwise, no new information can penetrate. It just says invalid operating system type of thing. And so I agree with you. I don't have respect for ideas, but I do have respect for people if I want to have a dialogue. Now, if somebody comes up with a load of bullshit or comes in a very negative way to me, I don't have eternal patience. There's no doubt about it. And I wish I'd recorded the conversation I had last week at Speaker's Corner about this guy that sort of interjected with his flat earth. Because I did get to a point where I said to him, you are just being obscurantist. I asked you a straightforward question. You didn't answer me. And so there are times where, I'll be less accommodating, so to speak, because I want to get to the point, because I see the way that certain people interact. And some people don't like it when I point that out, be it other Muslims, which shall remain nameless here, where they use obscurantism, etc. I'm going to point that out. And people don't like that. And they kind of say, oh, well, Rob, you're trying to get them to do it your way. No, I'm trying to get them to have an honest, concise conversation. And so when that doesn't happen, then I'm less likely to be as polite. But I don't respect ideas, but I do respect people, because they're just renting these ideas in their head. And if they upgraded their software, hopefully they'd rent better ideas in their head. So there we go. Back to hate speech for a moment. Is there anybody here? I just wondered if there's any of you guys that are obviously listening in the chat, or any of you guys that are on the discussion here, whether you think there's any form of hate speech as defined in that initial part, which is to attack with words, if I got it correctly. Let me just say, I just want to make sure I've got it correctly here. Hate speech is speech which attacks a person or group on the basis of attributes. Does anybody have any view which suggests that they are in favor of speech to prevent speech which allegedly attacks? I'm not sure how speech in and of itself can attack somebody, so maybe there's a conversation there to be had. But I'm wondering if there's anybody here that would defend hate speech in any scenario.
What about the poor intelligence, the artificial intelligence? Why are you persecuting them?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, have you not heard about the artificial intelligences that have been put on social media, all turned into racists and were spouting hate speech? Why are you persecuting them?
I'm not sure I'm with you there, GP.
I'll read this. There is a growing concern that many of the algorithms that make decisions about our lives, from what we see on the internet to how likely we are to become victims or instigators of crime, are trained on the data sets that do include a diverse range of people. What it's basically telling us is that researchers have discovered that there is an underlying level of conversation that goes on within social media that turned very innocent, naive artificial intelligence programs into out and out racists. That
Oh, I mean, that's right.
they were restoring they started off as being like naive little girls and ended up extolling the virtues of Adolf Hitler.
Oh yes, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
I
That's a little bit different to what we're talking about. I guess we're talking about normal humans.
Don't you think if an artificial program picking up on the fundamental psyche of human beings in their conversation end up being racists and absolute bigots, that humanity has a real problem underlying the surface of what we are?
Yeah, but we're the programmers, if you like, of
We are
artificial
all the
intelligence.
monsters. I think was it Ozzy who said we are all the monsters?
I'm not sure. But I mean, we are the creators of artificial intelligence, and we can tweak those, quote, algorithms in any case. But that's a different topic. Maybe that's a topic for a day to discuss, because there are legitimate concerns that
you haven't
AI...
seen the connection. You haven't seen the connection.
But hate speech, it seemed not to be very, very, very consist to take it serious, hate speech, because if we would take hate speech really serious, the Bible would be banned from the bookshelves and from the public, and the Qur'an, and probably many other religious works.
Well, I don't think the Bible, the Old Testament, is full of much hate speech.
Of course it was.
It's very violent, but it doesn't really hate that many people that still exist. Most of the people they have a go at have been slaughtered.
It promotes hate speech. It doesn't need to be so. Hate speech is in your eyes only valid if the people still exist who are hated against.
Well, yes, you can't slander somebody who's dead.
No, it's not about slander. It's about calling violence upon them.
Well, you can't really kill somebody who's already dead, can you?
Yeah, but that's the point. I mean, still it is hate speech. It is hate speech in a general statement, because if there were no black people anymore on this planet, because we killed any black people, and you still command kill any black people, it still is something bad, in my opinion.
Hang on, it's not written in the Old Testament to kill all the black people.
That was just an example.
Well, you've got to use examples that actually are relevant to your point. And I know the Old Testament is extremely violent, and it starts off by saying you had to slaughter certain tribes, and then recants halfway through that and said, "Oh, okay, you can keep the oxes and goats." And
not only now, come on, GP, be a little bit more honest on the case of the Bible.
I've read the Old Testament.
Sure, but you seem to forget many things. I mean, if you do certain things in God commands, you still have to be killed if you do certain things, and people have to kill other people, because
that's not racist.
In some mysterious ways, God doesn't kill people anymore, but He still commands rules how to kill people who do things.
It's not hate speech. He's saying, if you bugger someone, you've got to kill them. He's saying if you are a disobedient child, you've got to be killed. I mean, that's not hate speech. That's saying if you break a law.
So the question in the chat was from Fee, asking. So Fee is asking, what about a leader with plenty of following saying kill the blacks or Jews and justifies it somehow, and then as a result, some of their followers do kill? And so Fee is asking that in relation to me asking about whether hate speech can be hateful. So I guess what I asked Fee is, can some of us agree that, or is there anybody here that agrees that hate speech should be employed as in a criminal enterprise, in the sense of like punishing people for certain speech? And your example there, where a follower that a leader that has followers and incites them to kill, yes, we've called that incitement to violence. So there's already a law in the books that says, hey, if you incite people to violence and they commit that violence, and we can draw a direct line to you inciting them, then yes, you are liable to be prosecuted under that law of incitement to violence, which I agree with. But
no,
even incitement to violence, the bar needs to be very high. If somebody said, you know what, I wish I could kill the prime minister, I wish we could kill Trump or whichever it is, or Putin or whatever, that's not hate speech. Somebody would genuinely have to do it. And then the burden of proof would need to be on the state to show that there was in fact incitement to violence and that those followers directly followed that example in order to go and do that, and that perhaps they wouldn't have done if he had not said so. So the bar is still very high. But my point is around hate speech. That's not hate speech, no. That's incitement to violence.
I mean, there were many like left-wing reporters and Twitter celebrities that kind of incited violence. They said, I hope that Donald Trump will be assassinated or something like that. So there are many.
Yes, so I mean that sort of treads towards that line, but that's still not incitement. That's still not incitement to violence, because you'd have to. It's like a general statement, though, isn't it?
That is just a hope. I mean, people can have hopes. What's wrong with you?
Sarah Palin at one time was advocating that members of the Democrat Party be killed, and had posters with target signs printed out, and then one of them actually shot somebody through the head. Wasn't that case about Obama's first term of office? And she was never prosecuted. She was only given a verbal warning by the media.
That's why I say the bar is very high for incitement to violence, but that's not hate speech in my view. So incitement, if you're inciting to violence, that's got nothing to do with hate. You could say, I hate this person, and then incite somebody to violence, but the actual charge is incitement to violence. So I guess my question still is there any sort of hate speech as defined as something that will in some way attack another person's character that we would agree should be hate speech? In my view, no. Every speech should be allowed except incitement to violence.
Hate speech is such a stupid word. I mean, what does it mean? It's like you're not allowed to talk when your amygdala is activated in a certain way.
Well, I don't think bullying should be allowed, and dogpiling. I'm very much against bullying and dogpiling.
Yeah, but it's when you make laws, you have to be very specific, because you can just say anything. I mean, this is like how political dudes, they love to make things vague and like you can never test anything in any way. Hate speech, what does that even mean? Well, but you say incitement to violence, that is clear. You're inciting violence. But then you, as you said, you have to have an exact bar if you reach this level. I mean, for example, the Qur'an incite violence, murdering mushrikeen and things like that. But no one has banned the Qur'an in Western countries.
GP, can you just a little bit define what's bullying in your eyes?
Well, when you have about 4 or 5 children who are hounding some child in their group, or a year or two above or below their own age, to be upset, tearful and emotional. I think that's the key. They've got to become upset emotionally by persistent pressure of threats, verbal, not physical abuse.
The problem with children is that they are not, you can't punish them.
The problem with children is, my generation, we used to get punished if we bullied. And I think a lot of the problems we've got today is because they refused teachers the right to give out corporal punishment. And what has happened as a result of that is those children have grown into adults and no longer have a fear of somebody bigger than them. They either have to be
I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
It is, because then they take the law into their own hands. And that's why I think we're getting a lot. I mean, I've been thinking about this because we've been having a lot of knife crime this week in London. I mean, it's the third that's happened this week.
I mean, knife crime. The thing is, I agree that bullying is actually a very serious. Only the phenomena itself is very serious. There has been made neurological studies on people that were bullied when they were children, and like they have studied their brain and looked at like neuronal patterns, and they are similar to like soldiers with PTSD. So you see the same kind of and that is kind of serious. So
that's like Rebecca. I think her name was Rebecca Watson, calling herself being bullied, and therefore she has PTSD or
no, but
whatever
the thing
it's
is,
called.
no, but that might be true, because when you're a child, your brain is extremely plastic. So like,
Yeah, but she
very,
was bullied
very
as an
small.
adult. That's the point. I mean, if
Okay, that's nothing. But this study was on children that was bullied, and then they compared them to brains of PTSD.
sure, if
But
you are
what I
called
mean-
every day an asshole and pig face, a fat ass, a cunt. I mean, if you,
Yeah, but it's not
of
only
course you will
called.
be
Like,
defective in the end.
human beings are like social animals, and we can be very rude to each other, and like children can be extremely rude. So, but that's a very serious, like, if you think about it, that creates more damage for that person. Like, that person probably gonna die earlier because of that, because stress causes a lot of bad things, not just mentally but also physically. Maybe you get cancer earlier, and I don't know what.
If you've been bullied all of your childhood life and you grow up to be an adult, and all through your childhood life you've known there's been absolutely nobody you can turn to help, because the people who used to help were the teachers and now they refuse to help, what are you going to do when you're bullied as an adult? Well,
Yeah, and that's also,
why not
they're
bring
also
out a
like,
knife and defend yourself? Why not be bullied?
adults
That's the
also
problem.
bully each other all the time. So
Why not be the psychopath and run down the street with a gun shouting Allahu Akbar?
yeah, I mean, that is for example, like, okay, they were not really adults, but this Columbine killing, for example, the